Hey guys. Hi. It's David Elliott. It's Evangeline Mudd. It's Andrea Wesson. And it's Joan of Arc. Why not? So I've just come in from a walk. It's a beautiful morning, but it's going to rain this afternoon. So I thought I'd better get a good walk in. And I wore this hat. And this hat, I'll show it to you. Can you see there? There's a little doggy's face right there. And there's a little cat right there. And I bought this help to help support an organization that rescues animals that are in trouble. So I thought that was a good way to spend my money. And, everybody needs a little rescuing sometime. So, maybe you have a pet that is a rescue. My doggy was a rescue from Texas. Okay, guys. Let's see. I think I'll turn this around so I can see the book better. Kind of crazy looking, but that's okay. I don't care. Let's see. What happened yesterday? Oh, no. Yes. Evangeline and Dadus and Dr. Pickaflea realized that Rexy was tearing down the jungle in order to make toothpicks. But Dadu stopped him temporarily with a little goo-goo juice. Right? Chapter 20, They Are Human. On the other side of the clearing, the jungle became much thicker. Soon, the path disappeared altogether. Pansy had stopped walking and was instead following along in the treetops, swinging and hopping from branch to branch. It would have been easier for Evangeline to brachiate too, and she was just about to suggest it when she thought of the spiders. What would she do if she were hundreds of feet above the forest floor and she ran into one of the spitting spiders of Icky Nasty? I'd better stay on the ground, she thought. As she trudged along behind Dadu, it occurred to the girl that she didn't have the slightest idea where they were going. They had come into the jungle to look for her parents. But what was their destination? Dr. Pickaflea, she asked, where is Dadu taking us? I really hadn't thought about it, child, Dr. Pickaflea replied, but Dadu knows this jungle as if it were his own backyard. He was raised in it. If he says he can find your parents, then I'll bet the flying monkey that he can. Dadu himself then said something in his own language. By the way, dear, Dr. Pickaflea added, Dadu says to keep your eyes on the path. We're in spider territory now. Evangeline tried so hard not to look up that her neck began to ache. But above her, the canopy rustled with the animals and birds that were living there. To Evangeline, the jungle was beginning to seem like an animal itself. One huge animal made up of thousands and thousands of different parts. Leaves and feathers and fur and wings and flower and roots, and all connected to each other in some mysterious way. It reminded her, too, of some of the music Madame Valentina Klaudishkaya would play for her during her lessons. You see, Evangeline, the great teacher would say, each hand is making its own melody. Each finger is playing its own note. But to make beautiful music, they must all come together to form something completely new. Evangeline began to think of the jungle as a great symphony. She could feel its rhythms and its rests, its harmonies and its dissonance, its tempos and its dynamics. Every insect, no matter how small, every animal, no matter how ferocious, played its part in the symphony. The plants played their parts too, the sharp grasses and the soft mosses, the flowers, the thorns, and the trees, especially the trees. Eventually, Dadu led them to a bank of a river. We rests now, he said, putting down the bundle on a large rock. Evangeline couldn't have imagined any word sweeter than those three. She was utterly exhausted. She plopped down on one of the rocks. Within seconds, she was asleep and dreaming. She dreamed that she was back in Dr. Pickaflea's treehouse, swinging in the hammock. But in her dream, the arc of the swing was much, much bigger. It felt as if she were swinging from one side of the room to the other. "Whee!" she cried out. "Whee!" Evangeline couldn't remember at exactly which point in the dream she woke up to discover that she was swinging. She was in the canopy of the jungle, swinging from branch to branch and tree to tree. She was whisking through the jungle in the arms of a full-grown, golden-haired ape. Now, I don't know how many of you have awakened from a lovely dream to discover that you have been snatched in your sleep by a 400-pound ape whizzing you through the rainforest. If you have, you will know exactly how Evangeline felt when she discovered what was happening. "Dadu!" Evangeline cried out. "Dr. Pickaflea! Evangeline! Evangeline, dear, are you all right?" It was Dr. Pickaflea's voice. Evangeline was certain of that, but she couldn't tell where the voice was coming from. It sounded near, but that would have been impossible. "I think so," Evangeline cried out. "I mean, I'm not hurt or anything, but I'm being carried through the jungle by a golden hare." "I know, dear," said Dr. Pickaflea. "I am very aware of your predicament. I'd offer some assistance, but I myself am rather indisposed at the moment." Evangeline turned her head to see that Dr. Pickaflea herself had been snatched and was in the arms of an ape very similar to Evangeline's. "What's going on?" Evangeline asked. "I wish I knew," said Dr. Pickaflea. "What about Dadu?" Evangeline called out. "Do they have him too?" I don't think so," Dr. Pickaflea shouted, "but I can't be sure." "And what about Pansy?" But this question was answered by Pansy herself, who came swinging along, working hard to keep up with the two that had snatched Evangeline and Dr. Pickaflea. "Dr. Pickaflea," Evangeline called out once more, "what should we do?" "I'm not sure there is anything we can do," said Dr. Pickaflea. "Perhaps the best thing is to just sit back and enjoy the ride." This seemed very sensible advice to the girl. Certainly, it didn't make sense to struggle, since if the golden hare should drop her, the fall to the jungle floor would have been... She decided she wouldn't think about that. The ape itself had a very firm hold of Evangeline, but was not squeezing her so tightly that it was uncomfortable. Still, apes are not known to bathe as frequently as you or I might, so the smell of a 400-pound ape was not nearly as nice as Evangeline wished it had been. They traveled like this for what seemed like hours. Leaves and vines and flowers whizzed by, up and down and forward, always forward. Occasionally, Evangeline would come face to face with a marmoset or a tamarin, who looked extremely irritated to have its privacy so rudely interrupted by a 10-year-old girl who, after all, had no business sticking her nose into its business. Several times Evangeline tried to apologize, but by the time the words came out, she was already in the next tree. Eventually, the apes began to slow, and before she could realize what was happening, Evangeline was standing next to Dr. Pickaflea in a large clearing. The trees that surrounded it were so tall that it seemed their crowns were very nearly in the clouds. The golden hares, having run into the forest, were nowhere to be seen. "That was lovely," Dr. Pickaflea exclaimed. "Absolutely first rate. And oh, what I've learned about the ways golden hares travel. You won't see me falling out of any trees for a long time to come, I can tell you that." Evangeline's legs were a little wobbly, the way legs tend to be after spending a long time on a ship. But after a step or two on solid ground, the girl was as steady as ever. She looked around to see that she and Dr. Pickaflea were standing near a lovely clear pool fed by a stream bubbling up out of the jungle. Evangeline thought her eyes were playing tricks on her because at the other end of the stream she thought she saw what looked like a hut. "But it can't be," she said. "Not here." She was about to point out the mirage to Dr. Pickaflea when two golden hares walked out of the hut. At least, she thought they were golden hares. One thing was certain. They weren't the apes that had carried them there. These apes were much smaller. Even though they were far away, it seemed to Evangeline that they weren't nearly as hairy either. They almost look human, thought Evangeline. In fact, in fact, they are human. Merryweather, she cried out. Magdalena! For it was true. The golden hairs had brought Evangeline to her beloved parents, Merryweather and Magdalena Mudd. Well, she found them. She said she would, and she did, right? She had a little help from Dr. Pickaflea and the golden hairs and Dadu, but we all need help, especially on difficult adventures. So if somebody offers to help you, take it. I always do. Oh, look, there's Evangeline being carried through the jungle. That looks like fun, right? Okay. Oh, I wanted to just tell you one little writer's trick here. You know, this says, Evangeline began to think of the jungle as a great symphony. She could feel its rhythms and its rests, its harmonies and its dissonances. So Evangeline is comparing the jungle to a piece of music, to a symphony. It's like a symphony. And when we make that kind of comparison, when we say one thing is like another thing, or sometimes we say that's as beautiful as a rose. When we make comparisons and we use the word like or as, that is called a simile. Simile, S-I-M-I-L-E, simile. A simile is a comparison using like or as. And writers use similes all the time. So today, why don't you try to think of some similes? Being quarantined is like what? What's it like? Or it's as quiet as what? If you do that, you're making a simile. So make some similes today, guys. And also, why not try to think about rescuing somebody? Doesn't have to be big, somebody or something. Even if you're rescuing somebody from boredom, that's a help. Okay, guys. Oh, wait. I didn't see what the next chapter was. Chapter 21. I see what you mean. See you next time, guys. Bye.